is Sara Kaltwasser. I'm the Artist in Residence and Art Program Supervisor with Keswick's Wise and Well Center for Healthy Living in Baltimore, Maryland. And today, we're going to talk about ready-made art. Ready-made art is a type of art that uses readily made, mass-produced objects. And sometimes they're kept pretty close to what they were originally produced as, and sometimes they're altered. The conception of ready-made artwork actually ushered in what we know as conceptual art. We're going to talk a lot about Marcel Duchamp today, who's an artist who kind of got the ball rolling on all of this, who coined the concept of the ready-made. As we're learning together about what ready-made art is and what it can be, I want you to keep an open mind because it's a little bit different. Some of the topics we'll cover in this series focus more on things that you can see the artistic connection to, and then some challenge the concept of art a little bit more, but that's on purpose, and that's why we talk about them when we talk about art history. We're looking at the different modalities which people use to make art, and the ideas that inform that work. The term ready-made was first used by French artist Marcel Duchamp to describe the works of art he made from manufactured objects. It has since been applied more generally to artworks by other artists made in this way. Ready-made artworks use prefabricated, often mass-produced objects isolated from their intended use and elevated to the status of art by the artist choosing and designating them as such. The term assisted ready-made refers to works of this type whose components have been combined or modified by the artist. Duchamp's ready-mades asserted the principle that what is art is defined by the artist. Choosing the object is itself a creative act. Canceling out the useful function of the object makes it art, and its presentation in the gallery gives it a new meaning. Duchamp created the first ready-made bicycle wheel in 1913, which consisted of a wheel mounted on a stool as a protest against the excessive importance attached to works of art. This work was technically a ready-made assisted because the artist intervened by combining two objects. Duchamp subsequently made pure ready-mades, each of which consisted of a single item, including the best-known ready-made, the porcelain urinal entitled Fountain, made in 1917. By selecting mass-produced commonplace objects, Duchamp attempted to destroy the notion of the uniqueness of the art object. The result was a new, controversial definition of art as an intellectual rather than material process. At the time, the ready-made was seen as an assault on the conventional understanding not only of the status of art, but its very nature. In December 2004, Duchamp's Fountain was voted the most influential artwork of the 20th century by 500 selected British art world professionals. The publication The Independent noted in a February 2008 article that with this single work, Duchamp invented conceptual art and severed forever the traditional link between the artist's labor and the merit of their work. Jerry Saltz, an art critic, wrote in the Village Voice in 2006, Duchamp adamantly asserted that he wanted to de-deify the artist. The ready-mades provided a way around inflexible either or aesthetic propositions. They represent a Copernican shift in art. Fountain brings us into contact with an original that is still an original, but that also exists in an altered philosophical and metaphysical state. It is a manifestation of the Kantian sublime, a work of art that transcends a form, but that is also intelligible, an object that strikes down an idea while allowing it to spring up stronger. The theory behind the ready-made was explained in an anonymous editorial published in the May 1917 issue of the avant-garde magazine The Blind Man. Whether Mr. Mutt with his own hands made the fountain or not has no importance. He chose it. He took an ordinary article of life and placed it so that its useful significance disappeared under the new title and point of view, created a new thought for that object. This article brings up 3 points: that the choice of object is itself a creative act, that by canceling the useful function of an object, it becomes art, that the presentation and addition of a title to the object have given it a new thought, a new meaning. The ready-made continued to be an influential concept in Western art for much of the 20th century. It provided a major basis for the pop art movement of the 1950s and 60s, which took as its subject matter commonplace objects from popular culture. The intellectual emphasis of ready-mades also influenced the conceptual art movement that emerged in the 1960s, which considers the artist's idea more important than the final product. The ready-made work of Ai Weiwei. A cultural figure of international renown, Ai Weiwei is an activist, architect, curator, filmmaker, and one of China's most famous artists. Open in his criticism of the Chinese government, Ai was famously detained for months in 2011, then released to house arrest. Some of Ai's best-known works are installations, often tending towards the conceptual and sparking dialogue between the contemporary world and the traditional Chinese modes of thought and production. Whether creating an assisted ready-made object, as in the case of One Man's Shoe from 1987, or creating large-scale installations of objects, the ready-made work is an aspect of Ai Weiwei's practice. When Ai Weiwei moved to the United States in the 1980s, he began experimenting with the concept of the ready-made sculpture, having been influenced by the work of Duchamp. Among his ready-made works during that time included violin, which was altered to have a shovel handle for a neck. Some art historians believe that the shovel represents the working class and the violin the elite upper class. An example of one of his large-scale ready-made installations, of which there are many, is Forever Bicycles, a work that consists of more than 1,000 ready-made bicycles. The sculpture's name refers to the Forever Bicycle brand, which has been producing bikes in Shanghai since 1940, and the work can be seen as both a reference to Chinese peasants for whom the Forever Bicycle was a primary means of transport. TRACY, EMIN, My Bed. TRACY EMIN is an English artist known for autobiographical and confessional artwork. EMIN produces work in a variety of media, including drawing, painting, sculpture, film, photography, neon text, and son applique. My Bed is an example of her ready-made sculptural work. Created in 1998, the idea for My Bed was inspired by a depressive phase in the artist's life when she had remained in bed for several days without eating or drinking anything but alcohol. Having recently broke up a relationship, she remained ensconced in her room. When she looked at the state she had left and the mess that had accumulated in her room, she suddenly realized what she had created. The bed was presented in exactly the state that EMIN claimed it had been after languishing in it for several days was over. The artwork generated considerable controversy in the media. My Bed was exhibited at the Tate Gallery in 1999 as one of the shortlisted works for the Turner Prize, although it did not win the prize, losing out to Steve McQueen. Its notoriety has persisted. It was announced in May 2014 that the work was to be auctioned, and estimates at the time were close to £1 million. When auctioned by Christie's in July of 2014, the piece was sold for a little over £2.5 million. Joseph Kosuth, 1 in 3 Chairs. Joseph Kosuth is an American conceptual artist known for his ongoing investigations into language and its utility within art, through his text-based works and installations. Like the work of John Baldessari and Daniel Byrne, Kosuth takes art from the physical world into the realm of ideas. Kosuth examines semiotic expression as seen in his seminal work 1 in 3 Chairs, made in 1965, which consists of a wooden chair, a photograph of the same chair, and the dictionary definition of a chair. Joseph Kosuth was quoted as saying, "When objects are presented within the context of art, and until recently objects always have been used, they are as eligible for aesthetic consideration as are any objects in the world." He once mused, "An aesthetic consideration of an object existed in the realm of art means that the object's existence or functioning in an art context is irrelevant to the aesthetic judgment." In conclusion, according to Marcel Duchamp, since the tubes of paint used by artists are manufactured in ready-made products, we must conclude that all paintings in the world are ready-made aided, and also works of assemblage. Ai Weiwei adds, "My work is always a ready-made, cultural, political, or social, and also it could be art, to make people relook at what we have done, its original position, to create new possibilities." So we learned a lot in a short amount of time, right? We covered quite a bit. And a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts on what ready-made art is. Now, ready-made art in general, I would say, is a little bit more controversial. It's the kind of artwork that you'll see in a gallery and someone will be like, why is that there? But I find it interesting, especially because from the standpoint of like this idea that we divide between art and craft, more specifically functional craft. I think ready-made art especially brings an interesting point to the conversation around the utilitarian object and the mass-produced object, and also what art is and what it can be in terms of of the craftsmanship of something. Does there have to be something that's one of a kind? Ready-made sculpture is saying no, not necessarily. Ready-made artwork also explores this idea of authorship and who's the true author, the person who makes the object or comes up with the idea that informs or affects that object. I think ideas around authorship are really interesting. It's a lot to think about, for sure. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you've learned something new. And I hope you stay cool out there, because this late summer heat's getting me, so I hope it's not getting you too bad. Stay safe, be well. Thanks for watching.